Hello, Star Family. Blessings to you all, wherever you are, in outer space, wherever in outer space you are. Big blessings. We're going to detail the next lunar cycle in this video. It is another month, and we will look at this lunation. We're going to look at the mundane astrology today, which is from the Latin mundus for the world. We always look at the mundane astrology. That's nothing different. I'm just identifying that as being very general, like very broadly generalized. These reports are really different than like specific astrology reports. So if you really want to dial into your own personal relationship with these cycles, or you can just get a little closer to how they're affecting you individually. You could learn foundational astrology, basic astrology, or you could consult an astrologer. Those are the general options that are out there. People familiar with this channel know I never try to give personalized advice, but not overly personalized advice, but just to talk about the transits and the patterns in the sky as a very mundane. The same mundane transits can affect two people, any two people, totally differently. Actually, wildly differently. But more on that later. We'll sort of touch on that this video. It's a topic I could kind of illustrate maybe a little better visually. And this month starts on November 1st. The lunar month starts November 1st with a new moon late in the constellation of Virgo, and really pretty close to the Libra cusp. And this month will take us through Libra season as the sun traverses Libra into Scorpio. The new moon is part of a rare Grand Sextile, which is like two interlocking Grand Trines, or what you'll hear some people refer to as a Merkaba. We'll do a little more on that later, what kind of unpack that for people who may have heard people talking about the mighty Merkaba, but don't really know what it is or how it relates to astrology. At any rate, we'll see the full moon in early Taurus on November 15th, reflecting the sun as it moves through constellation Libra. So this month will be Libra season, even though it's like technically a late Virgo moon. The next new moon will be right on fixed star Antares in the heart of Scorpio. So we won't have a Libra new moon this year, but we will pass through the stars of Libra, like the sun will pass through the stars of Libra this month. So at this point, we're just settling into this eclipse cycle, like catalyzed by last month's solar eclipse, of the nature of potential confusion, loss, or endings, and brilliant insights. Just to overgeneralize. There were breakthroughs portended, and that's an energy that not only hit hard last month, but will catalyze and color these 6 months. These 6 months between that last eclipse and the next series of eclipses. All right, friends. Here is a look at the heavens. We're going to take just a kind of look around the sky to get familiar. This is the November 1st new moon, where we see sun and moon coming together right near the stars of Libra, and some important stars of Libra, but still in the territory of the stars of constellation Virgo. The south node is in Virgo, and the south node will move towards Leo. Mercury has made his way almost through Libra. Venus is in Fucus, Ceres in Sagittarius. Pluto on the Capricorn-Sag cusp has just gone direct for the first time in many months. We have Saturn in the constellation of Aquarius, Neptune at home in her stars of Pisces, and she's joined by the North Node, by Chiron, and by dwarf planet Eris. Just to keep going round, we see Uranus here in the territory where the full moon will be, very close to the Pleiades, joined in constellation Taurus by Jupiter. In early Cancer, right on the Gemini cusp, we have Mars, and so we have Mars in Cancer, and we are back around the sky. That's sort of the way things sit, pretty evenly distributed. So cool, fam. Let's look at these charts. First of all, we're here with the new moon, and new moon is always going to be a very low energy time comparatively. And the new moon is always going to represent a sort of natal chart for that month. It's always going to talk about what wants to happen and the intentions that are sort of pregnantly awaiting to express. They usually express as the month unfolds, typically with the full moon being a kind of like peak or high energy point. And this pulse is what we chart month to month on this channel. So here we have the new moon in late Virgo, and the energies of late Virgo could just best be understood in terms of understanding. There's a real critical analysis and thinking bent to Virgo that likes to get into sort of picking things apart and understanding them at depth. There's an energy here of service, and it's somewhat selfless, but here on the Libra cusp, we're engaged in an energy that's a little bit less doormat-like. We're not so much the energy of selflessness at our own expense in later Virgo. In fact, a lot of what the journey through Virgo is about is learning how to be of benefit to others without making a doormat out of oneself. So there's a couple ways that we can understand Virgo. We can understand Virgo personally. And in a personal sense, this is a goddess energy, a very feminine energy that blesses us, especially through the fixed star Spica, but generally challenges us to figure our life out and to figure life out, broadly speaking. We can also take a look at Virgo from an impersonal point of view, or we could say even transpersonally. And we can look at Virgo as a force of life that's just at a different scale, operating at a different scale, so much bigger than us. And in this form, in this less personal form, more impersonal form, she is depicted as the scales as the figure of justice, the blindfolded figure who holds the scales. And Virgo and Libra are a sort of transition one into the other. They relate to each other when we look at Libra as the scales, and when we see this archetype as signifying justice. Virgo always makes us ready for Libra. It makes us ready to work with other people closely. And that's what Libra season will be about. It'll be about developing interpersonal connections, one-on-one relationships, and building the I-thou axis in our lives. through the processes of Virgo and learning to be of service, learning to be sort of humble in our endeavor to improve the situations we're in, we can develop relationships that don't self-destruct, basically. We can learn how to be on equal footing with other people. So this is all part and parcel of this placement, of this area of the sky, these degrees of the sky. They tell that story. They reflect that archetypal dynamic. There's a sort of other way of approaching Libra entirely, which is as not as connected to Virgo and the archetype of justice, but is connected to Scorpio and the territory given to Ophiuchus zodiacally. And that way of looking at the stars of Libra sees them not as the scales, but as the claws of the scorpion. Whether we see them as the goddess's scales of justice, or scorpion's claws, or like the Egyptians saw this area of the sky, the scale of high truth, Ma'at, on which one's heart was weighed against the feather of high truth before one moved on to the next life. That trinity of scales, scorpion, and judgmental sort of, life and death kind of judgment represents the Greek, Middle Eastern, and Egyptian understandings of these stars. So I bring all that in because Libra season, which we'll be passing through this month, is a powerful time. It's a time I don't want to just gloss Libra because we don't have a new moon here. However we conceptualize Libra, Virgo leads to it. It leads into it. It engenders and develops it. So in late Virgo, we're ideally reflecting some degree of mastery of the Virgo themes, unless that awkward transition from Leo that affects early Virgo that I mentioned last month. In late Virgo, there's a lot more stability, a lot more trust, self-trust, and a lot more humility, actually. But like again, I said, without being the doormat, when the energy here wants to express is the energy of bringing improvement to, bringing uplift to, bringing refinement to, bringing beauty to on the cusp of Libra. Anything that we're part of. Absolutely, any aspect of our lives. Just thinking very broadly here. And then we have very little happening with this new moon. We have very little happening from the point of view of aspect. We have a trine to Saturn, and this really singles Saturn out. Now, Saturn's doing some other stuff, but the new moon is not. The new moon relates solely to Saturn. And Saturn is retrograde in Aquarius for a couple more weeks at this point. He'll be stationed direct for the full moon. This will bring a sense of serious thought. Like all kinds of serious thought will be empowered, both at the time of the new moon and just generally speaking throughout the month. Saturn is a force that represents in mundane astrology power, the structure of power, and the structure of authority, how it is experienced at the ground level, at the meso level. And Saturn's going to be stationed direct for the full moon. So this is a very Saturnian cycle. That's one thing we can say. We can say it's a very Saturnian cycle. And I'd like to just say that last time Saturn passed the galactic center was late 2016. It made its first pass in early 2017. And ever since then, as it's taken on a new flavor, which planets do as they pass the GC, I think we've seen expressions of authority in the world that are leaning more authoritarian. That's been my personal observation, that this passage of Saturn around the GC, the galactic center, signifying a new phase, a 29-year, basically, a 29-year phase of Saturn activity. I've seen it favor more rigid and unfeeling and uncompassionate forms of government and authority. It's unfortunate for the everyday person, but nonetheless, when we examine the pattern that Saturn and the galactic center make, we do see that we spent 2017 in conjunction, and that we had a sextile in 2023. I haven't correlated that to anything, but it comes back for the square in 2025. So in a way, you could say that it's my inclination that it has more to do with authoritarianism. But we may not know until 2025 what the expression of Saturn is going to be. Such is the nature of the waxing square. Whenever you have a waxing square, it's actually an emergent and expressive sort of signature where something will make itself known. We have this Saturn formation, and we also have some very interesting geometries, very, very interesting geometries. We have a Mars-Mercury-Neptune formation, a grand trine formed by Mars in Cancer, Mercury in Libra, and Neptune at home in Pisces with the North Node. And I just want to generally say this is really going to benefit creative and new thinking. It's going to benefit vivid creativity and artistic excellence. It's part of a complicated formation where Neptune is at the Uranus Pluto midpoint, and Uranus opposes Mercury, and Pluto opposes Mars. So this Grand Trine actually is just part of a larger formation here with the personal planets, Mars, Mercury, being a bit at odds with the outer planets. And you may also notice that their octaves, they're in opposition to their lower octaves. Uranus and Mercury are an octave of each other, and Pluto and Mars are a higher and lower octave of each other. So this is going to get intense. This just signifies intensity. I think we can say that when we have the personal planets in contact with the outer planets of change and transformation and dissolution, that we need to expect, to some extent, inner change. We need to develop or be ready with flexibility, inner flexibility, in order to be appropriately aligned to something like this. And we have Jupiter and Venus opposed. So here's another inner planet, and what, for the most part, outer planet, although Jupiter's just sort of where it's one of the lines you can draw. You could say Jupiter's sort of half inner, half outer, but it doesn't matter. There's a trine sextile here to Chiron, which actually Chiron is sextile to Jupiter by just one arc minute. So we have a 0-degree relationship here, and a trine to Venus. Furthermore, we have the stars Sabik in Ophiuchus and Bellatrix in Orion, activating Venus and Jupiter. Just to unpack all of that and kind of put it in the simplest terms I can, I think that we have victory via working with the shadow and the othered, the that which in ourselves we cannot accept. That's what's signified here. If there's victory to be gained in a formation like this, and I believe there is, it could activate our wounds. And we're going to need to be very open-minded to the fact that what we're experiencing in other people as the opposition, it magnetizes interpersonal interaction, as does Venus, all on her own. It's her party trick. That interpersonal interaction could reflect that part of ourselves, or those parts of ourselves which we have failed to accept, which we cannot accept as ourself, that which we other. And when we see it in others, it infuriates us. Why? Because we haven't accepted it. This sort of basic Jungian tripwire is it's very common. It's not that anyone's immune from. That's just a function. That's just what a psyche does, my friends. So there's no problem here, except not to recognize it, not to recognize the dynamic and what it's asking for. It's asking for us to expect to see what we don't like about ourselves in other people. We can see it, and it might infuriate us. And this is going to relate. This is going to relate to Saturn via a T-square for the full moon. So keep your eye on this. Venus herself is on an axis between Sabik in Ophiuchus and Larawag or Epsilon Scorpia in Scorpio. And whenever there are a couple axes that pit the stars of Scorpio against the stars of Ophiuchus when a planet makes that passage along these degrees of the zodiac, and it usually signifies a choice, a conscious choice to be made. Do we go with our lower natures, this sort of like more intense but a little bit more easily wounded, kind of like, I don't know, it's not really quintessentially scorpionic, but in as much as it reflects the Scorpio Ophiuchus dichotomy, we can say there's a poison medicine choice to be made. Do we extract the medicine from the situation, or do we cultivate the poison with further toxic activity? Could be tough stuff, but forewarned is always forearmed. And this interesting formation here, this crazy bunch of angles that we see, all these geometries, is actually completed. Let's see. It's actually completed by Vesta, the asteroid Vesta. So I'll bring in Vesta now to this chart, and what we see when we add this point, we plot Vesta. She is the second largest asteroid belt object after Ceres, the dwarf planet Ceres. Vesta can be seen from Earth. Vesta was discovered in 1807, 6 years after Ceres. And this completes a formation like 2 Grand Trines. This is what some people call this a Merkaba. And they say, oh, I've got a Merkaba, or there is a Merkaba. And you might, first of all, you might look up a Merkaba and discover that it's a Hebraic concept having to do with being like a sort of spiritual chariot. And if you dig a little deeper, you'll learn that a Merkaba has to do with the sacred geometry of the double tetrahedron, or the star tetrahedron. In fact, let's see. All right, friends. So here on the screen, we just pulled up a Merkaba, and this is 2 interlocking tetrahedrons, which is basically a 3-sided or a 4-sided triangular pyramid. So we have 3 sides and a base, to each pyramid and they interlock like this. Now, the reason people say that that is a Merkaba is because when you look at this geometry from above, it does that. It does that. It makes two interlocking triangles. This is why people say in astrology that they say this formation is a Merkaba. So yeah, cool stuff. And to get away from that, the Merkaba, and get into Vesta, I thought we'd look at Vesta in mythology, because I don't really have a deep study under my belt of asteroids. I don't specialize in asteroids, but I think we can take a lot from the metaphor and what's between the lines in mythology. That is actually the purpose of mythology. So when we come here and we see in Greek that Vesta was Hestia, and she represents a sort of quiet, independent energy. In fact, the most interesting thing I find here is that she always had to stay home, tending the fireplace. And it's not very interesting, but if you read different variations of this myth, she was very reserved and quiet. She wanted to be free in her own quiet way, and even if it meant never falling in love. And even though she wasn't a very wildly important figure to everybody, was later sort of replaced by Dionysus. She was one of the 12 original Olympians, for what that's worth, and she was interestingly the very first one eaten by the Titan Kronos, the last one to be disgorged. So I find this interesting. That all she wanted to do was stay at home tending the fireplace. Okay, that seems pretty innocuous, pretty innocent, but she wanted to be free, even if it meant not doing the societally predetermined things like getting married, bearing children, doing family, and all that. That was the first threat. Or maybe the Titan Kronos just ate her first because she was the most innocuous, the most innocent. Maybe she was just the easiest target. We may never know. As a goddess of the hearth and home, I think that we can connect to this to fourth house activities and the symbolic inner fire in our lives. That which warms and animates, that which nourishes, and which protects us from the cold and the harshness of life. Now, when we get back to the chart, what we see is Vesta Hestia with the south node. And the south node often can take and it can diminish. It can diminish the effect of something rather than intensifying it in a weird way. Interesting also is that Vesta Hestia is on the supergalactic center. She is 4 arc minutes, 0 degrees, 4 arc minutes. So right here is the degree of the super massive object that our galaxy orbits, the nucleus of our galactic cluster, if you will. So we have Neptune in the north node and Vesta in the south node. And this could really easily confuse issues around autonomy and boundaries. Any confusion like this can be looked at as orienting us to our spiritual path forward and to higher spiritual principles, which are also reflected by Neptune, North Node, and Pisces. But the nodes have a very diabolical way of acting. They don't always give a straightforward and a sort of dignified. They don't always cast the most straightforward and dignified light on things in their area. So just to synthesize this, we have a really powerful It's just potent. It's like I said, pregnant with a lot of transformation. There's a ton. Everything activated here is relating to the connection between the inner planets and their outer planet counterparts in the most powerful one in the more powerful formations that a planet could find itself in, a Grand Trine. Any body that's part of any Grand Trine will be intensified and will go through increased activity and evolutionary impulse. So it's going to be very difficult to make any clear statements, to derive anything helpful from this, except to say it will be intense and of the nature of change and transformation. It is concordant with the US elections, which are just going to affect the world. And I don't think that's American exceptionalism or some kind of arrogance to say that. I mean, I understand that the rules that apply to other cultures, like apply to United States. I get it. Like common sense rules, like cause and effect, spiritual rules like karma. It all applies. Like, yeah. But from my point of view, this event is going to have a really great impact. It'll have a great effect on the planet in any outcome. I'm not going to engage in election prediction. That's not even a study based on these charts. I would direct everyone to Kenneth Bowser for that. And anyone else. And it's tons of opinions out there on that in the astrology world. I would say that Mars, Pluto, Eris, T-square can represent problems with force. So we have Mars and Pluto, and we're T-squared by Eris. There could be problems with force used inappropriately. That's just something to be aware of. That might have a lot more to do with how this affects your chart, where especially if like my moon is right here on Pluto. So I have to be very careful of that, how I use force, and I have to be very aware of how force is moving around me to be alert and doing my best to be aware of and responding well to situations. There's a Venus Jupiter Saturn formation. There's a Venus Jupiter Saturn. It's actually technically a T-square at this point, and that T-square will get very, very close for the full moon. And on this new moon, a Venus Jupiter Saturn T-square talks about the structure of power, the structure of finance. A T-square is a difficult formation, and you could keep your eye on developments in that arena. This huge Grand Sextile, double Grand Trine, star tetrahedron, Merkaba madness. This really favors adaptation. This really favors personal change. It favors those who can bend with the wind and adapt to the new, a la Neptune in Pisces, Neptune North Node. People who aren't afraid of doing things differently. But whatever happens, the energies in the heavens are about transformation, metamorphosis, manifesting the next phase of our human journey. Again, how they affect your chart will be personal. The mundane astrology itself will always be necessarily overgeneralized. Like I was just talking about my moon being here, and that's just one example. Someone else who found themselves in a different place, let's say for someone else, their moon was here in Libra, trine sextile to this opposition. Well, I have Pluto over my moon and Mars opposite my moon, and that's one ball of wax, and a whole different ball of wax would be to have my natal moon here in Libra, which was harmoniously aspected by Mars and harmoniously aspected by Pluto, and with Mercury, which would give me an amazing ability to express profound and interesting and heartfelt things. That's what that would look like. Where a moon under Pluto is just looks like it's you just have to tread water to kind of stay afloat as you're sort of metamorphosed. Yeah. But we can speak very generally about patterns and alignments, right? So on one level, this is for everyone without exception, or anyone interested in astrology. And on another level, this is specifically informing those of us who use astrology and are familiar with our own. Yeah, with that in mind, I think I'd like to just close it up and move on to the transits, waxing transits. All right, fam. Here we are. So on November 1st, we have the new moon. On the 15th, we have the full moon. Early on the 9th, we have a waxing quarter moon. And the first week of November, lunar cycle looks busy, just absolutely busy. We got a big week. On the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th of the month, we have Mercury making trine to Mars and sextile to Pluto. It's on the 2nd. And we have two major oppositions. Now, from the new moon chart, you may remember Venus opposed Jupiter and Mars opposed Pluto. Those both go exact within hours on the 3rd of the month, 3rd of November. And on the 4th, we have Sun trine Saturn. Very serious. That's the only relationship that Sun is making for new moon is to Saturn. So that perfects on the 4th. So a lot of this is sort of like the crashing of a wave, the cresting and crashing of a wave, and it's going to set this month off. And then you have the 5th, and that's election day, just to remind everyone. So all of this energy right before then is just, it could be very heightened. It could be very polarized and very heightened. And we could really, especially with this formation of Venus opposite Jupiter, which perfects on the 3rd, we could really be seeing what we don't like about ourselves in everyone around us who reflects it. So we have to be very, very careful with Mars opposite Pluto at the same time, because this is likely to get intense. It's likely to get intense, and it could even get violent with Mars opposite Pluto. I would be irresponsible not to mention that famous Mars opposite Pluto effect. And then as we move on towards the waxing quarter, we have Mercury coming up against the nodes, not really against, because he trine sextiles the nodal axis. It was more harmonious. So we have Mercury moving with the sort of karmic serpent there, and Venus trining Eris. Now all that happens on the 6th, 7th, and early on the 8th of November. So around that time, especially late in the 6th, early in the 7th, the inner planets are activated by darker forces, more like serious, nefarious forces. The nodes, the North Node and South Node, affect Mercury, and Eris affects Venus. The nodes and Eris both distort things. The nodes tend to eclipse. They kind of dull the full light of things. And it all creates obsessive patterns of thought. That's something Eris does too. Creates fixation, kind of laser focus. Eris brings the unexpected and the chaotic and tests of character. So Venus trine Eris on the 7th could really soften Eris's difficult effects, or more likely, since Venus right here at this time is very near the galactic center, we could be challenged by the seriousness, that's a GC function, of the reality presented to us, especially from a spiritual point of view. That could be an Eris in late Pisces. And all of this, the Venus in Eris, or Venus trine Eris, is a continuation of the Venus opposite Jupiter, Both of these are going to show a reflection of what we haven't accepted of ourselves and other people. That's what it sets up. So you have to understand that. It's just what it does. And then coming up on the 9th, we have the waxing quarter moon. So I'll put that chart on the screen for those of us who make careful note of all the placements. I want to say as little as possible about this chart. So there you go. You can pause that and check it out for yourself. I'd like to get back to that second week of November and the transits here. So the second week will a lot less busy, far less busy than the first. So we have Venus square to Neptune, just as the waxing quarter moon is happening on the 8th, 9th, and 10th. And that could be a lot of confusion. Venus is exactly on the galactic center at this point. She's 3 arc minutes from the massive black hole at the center of our galaxy. That's very serious. And Neptune in Pisces, when she squares, it can be confused. It could be serious confusion or confusion about serious things. So let's be careful at this time to keep to the serious and really clarify, really go through the extra effort that we'll need under a Neptune square to clarify any serious issues or matters in our life. Then we get a couple of days break, and on the 11th, perfecting on the 12th and going into the 13th, we have Mercury square to Saturn. And Mercury will be in Scorpio, Saturn will be in Aquarius. And at this point, Mercury will be opposite to Jupiter, kind of T-squared by Saturn. And not on this chart because it's not close enough. It's not close enough to 1 degree of orb. But just generally speaking, talking about wider aspects, we have Jupiter involved in that too. And this could bring a lot of thought and communication about the structure of power, about structure of finance and power, and it could bring a lot of thought and communication around issues of personal power. And then we have Saturn. Saturn stations direct on the 15th, going exact. Saturn will be stationed from the 14th to, I believe, the 16th. Saturn is going to be stationed for the full moon, which is a good segue because that's really going to emphasize Saturnian themes for the full moon. And here we are looking at the full moon. Now, the full moon on the 15th of November is going to be a very high energy cycle compared to the pulse that the new moon represents. The cycle of high energies and low energies happens on the full and newness of the moon. So this full moon is going to be a time to manifest those plans that we made when the sun and moon were back in late Virgo, whatever those plans may be. This is a time to really cash in. So in as much as we can look forward to this and kind of make our plans accordingly, we can plan for change because the moon is with Uranus and trine to Pluto. So really most closely activated in this whole matrix by connection to the planets of change and transformation. We have, just to break it down from the beginning, a moon on the Aries-Taurus cusp, reflecting the light of a sun as it is moving through the constellation of Libra. It's a very Venusian axis. And this should bring some ease as Venus is traveling through Sag and does pretty well there. She does well there. The moon with Uranus and the sun opposite Uranus could bring strange feelings or erratic feelings, and it could bring anxiety. But it could also bring personal insight, and could also bring radical ideas of a nature of breakthrough. The star that Moon and Uranus are on, Algol, is a really famous star, and it's famous for being difficult. Ooh, difficult star. The demon star, Algol, the head of the demon, Ras Algol. It was before it got this horrible moniker. It was known as the Lilith star and associated with primordial femininity and women's freedom and autonomy issues. It's a very serious star. It brings tests. Lilith is not really like anti-Saturn, but she's committed to freedom, so she's anti-restriction, right? And then we do see Saturn, and we'll get to this later. Saturn stationed direct, T-squaring a Jupiter Mercury. I had said keep your eye on Jupiter Venus, but it's actually Jupiter Mercury for the full moon. So I have to walk that back. Oh, rarely have to do that, but I did. I was confused, and it's not Jupiter Venus that is connected. It's Jupiter Mercury. But regardless of that, what we can expect is that this moon is going to bring tests and challenges and anxiety, and it could be around change. It could be around. It's likely to be around change. It really is, with Uranus and Pluto activated. Very likely to be around the nature of things that need to change, and that being stressful. We have Ceres conjunct Pluto, which I think is interesting, and I just want to say that this trine sextiles the full moon, so we have a harmonious relationship here, and this kind of combines this really heartfelt, interconnected energies of Ceres with this really heartless, like passionate urge to power that Pluto represents. So, and yes, you can have heartless passion. I think Pluto is there's compassionate passion, and there's dispassionate. Well, is there dispassionate passion? Look, Pluto is paradoxical. It comes with the outer planet thing. It's a paradox, and it's very hard to understand. It's why it gets called transcendental. And yeah, it's dispassionate passion. It's like a Zen riddle. It's like supposed to make your mind go, and when your mind pops, you win. So, don't get grumpy about that stuff, or think that the people who are trying to point it out to you are talking hippy dippy bullshit. But there really is. Think of Marlon Brando in The Godfather. Just so cold and dispassionate, but so fiery and just totally. It's passion about power. It's not compassion for people. Now that's what Ceres represents: compassion for people, the humanity in situations. So we're bringing these two forces together. Opposed to Mars, but with the new moon, with the full moon. With the full moon. So I don't know what to expect here, except that things are going to be potentially confusing, hard to understand, and a mix of passion, passionate feelings, and dispassionate urges. Combo portends major change, and I think what's changing is our sense of shared humanity as these two conjoin. They will move towards conjunction. Ceres is the faster moving. She'll overtake Pluto, and we'll have another Pluto planetary conjunction. Well, Ceres is a dwarf planet. All right, it is Libra season, Sun in Libra. Yeah, the scales of Ma'at opposite the Lilith star. This could be harsh. This could bring judgment. This could bring tests. This could bring, I don't know, Saturn station direct. I feel like this is the planet of karma and consequence, I feel like this could be challenging. And Saturn station direct, T squaring Jupiter opposite Mercury. Right? This is heavy and it's authoritarian, I think. If we go back to, looking to the 30 years that led up to 2016, and then looking at 2016 to the approaching Saturn square in 2025, I think that we can say that Saturn's got some heavy vibes this time around, and he's not kidding. And this could really be intensely on everyone's mind. So Jupiter's off of Bellatrix and has moved into the vicinity of fixed star Rigel, which is generally very good. It's a stronger placement for Jupiter to display its benefic and protective functions. Well, there's so much going on. It's pretty intense, but I think that's the full moon as I see it. I had to synthesize all that, just kind of generally kind of put it in like moods or tones or something that made sense instead of just all that aspects and detail. I'd say that Jupiter opposite Mercury, T squared by Saturn, it means resistance to whatever happens. There will be resistance to whatever happens, whichever way the election goes, or whatever way anything goes. There's going to be stubborn resistance, and this indicates a tremendous lack of ease. A Saturn station direct for a full moon, T squaring, and inner outer planet opposition, and again, Jupiter can function as an inner planet, but let's just say this does not look easy. So I think that leaning into the intensity of this full moon skillfully means recognizing the request for change and transformation. Whether inwardly or outwardly or both, we have major change, just major change reflected in all of these alignments, from Mercury's relationship to Uranus, for the new moon to the continued Mars-Pluto opposition, and how those planets very closely and powerfully relate to each other as octaves. It's demanding personal change on a personal level, who we are, how we think, how we act. Doesn't look easy because Saturn station direct is not an easy mark, my friends. But I just want to leave that there. I think that this cycle is going to favor those who can bend with the wind. The proverbial sapling that bends with the wind will be the tree that survives any storm that approaches at this time, rather than being the mighty oak who gets snapped. So let's move on. Let's move on to the waning transits. And we have an insane week, another insane week, followed by a kind of low-key week. So the pulse of this cycle, as you're seeing, between the full moon on the 15th and the next new moon on December 1st, we'll have a waning quarter moon. And after the full moon, this week is going to be crazy. Those of you with hidey holes may want to explore them. From Saturn stationing direct for the full moon, we have Venus square the nodes. We have the Sun opposite Uranus. We have Mercury opposite Jupiter, and the Sun trine Neptune. all those overlap each other and take us from the 15th to the, let's say, 19th, but from the 18th almost through December 1st, we have Mars interacting with North and South Node by Grand Sextile, 3 contacts for each, and as it all blends into each other, we have Sun sextile Pluto and Venus sextile Saturn. That's all in 1 week. That there will be 3 contacts of Mars trine North Node and 1 contact of Mars sextile South Node before the full moon. Before the waning quarter moon. And all of that transit activity, all those perfections happen in 1 week's time. So I don't know really where to start with this in a timely fashion and how to keep it helpful. I'd say that's a crazy week. It's just very intense. It's all, the good news is it's all inner planet transits except for Saturn stationing, and everything else involves inner transit. So it's going to be transitory, right? Ephemeral. The outer planets are activated too, and the nodes are too, by Venus squares and Mars trine sextiles. There's no Eris. All the planets are represented here: Sun, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. Absolutely a packed week of just intense energies. And the 15th through 18th could be challenging in many ways. So I would say this, especially at this time, just use your tools to downregulate and don't overextend. Not with Sun opposite Uranus, not with Mercury opposite Jupiter, because that will be the danger, to go too far. That's always the danger with Jupiter oppositions, is going too far, further than you meant to. You get a little momentum and then you go, ooh, this is working great. And then you go too far. So we have to be careful about that. It's just going to be a guano, absolutely guano week. I would say if you have a hidey hole and it's an option, take it. But for those of you that need to be out in the world, just expect a lot of dynamic activity, it's all over the board. It's everywhere. Just expect a lot of dynamic activity. And let's take a look at this. Moon. Here we have waning moon. For those of you who want to pause the video and get this up on the screen for you and make your notes, the waning quarter moon sees the moon on fixed star Regulus, as the sun is just entering into the area of Shuba, Delta Scorpius, the mouth or the head, the crown, actually, in literal translation, the crown of the scorpion. And back we'll go to the transits. Similar to the waxing cycle, the waning cycle sees a little bit of wind down here near the end of the month, and just a lot less intensity, generally speaking. We have Mercury stationing retrograde. Everything else is extensions of things we've talked about from before. The waning quarter moon, like Mars sextile South Node. The first new thing that happens after the waning quarter is Mercury will station retrograde on the 24th, 5th, and 6th. The Sun will trine the North Node and sextile the South Node right around the same time. This all will be overlapped, and the Sun will trine Mars too. So we have Mars trine North Node, Sun trine North Node, Sun trine Mars. We'll have a Sun, Mars, North Node, Grand Trine around the 25th, 6th, and 7th. And this is going to be bold moves forward for us all. So get ready to take bold steps into the next phase of this journey. I think Mars emphasizes force and energy, moving things forward, and Mars always emphasizes new beginnings. And after that little burst of sort of Grand Trine, Mars, Sun, North Node, Grand Trine, we have a break. We take a break for a couple of days. And the 28th, 29th, 30th, and December 1st will be relatively low key, with December 1st being the next new moon. And the next new moon is something that I have ready to look at. So, Sun and Moon on Antares, half a degree. Tough star, classic, difficult star. There are good ways of working with Antares. There's medicine here, incredible medicine. So we'll detail that next month. We'll talk a lot about Scorpio and how to look at it in a noble and an uplifted and a dignified light. For now, I want to say that's a new moon opposite Jupiter on Antares, and Jupiter's sun moon is T squared by Saturn, so it'll be another Saturn cycle. And I want to offer absolutely nothing by way of interpretation. I just want to kind of put that up there as a reminder of where we're going. We're headed through Libra season into Scorpio season. Where to start? My own work. I'll start there this month. I have a website. It is One Sky Astro, and I talk about my work, which is evolutionary astrology with a constellational basis. Check it out. Check out my website. I've got a little bit of the history of astrology written up there neatly for anyone who wonders about that arc. I have a little info on evolutionary astrology, what it is, what separates it from other branches of astrology, where it came from, what makes it unique. And there's links, like link to Radical Astrology, which is a great Facebook community centered around constellational astrology of all brands, where you can meet people like Rio. Rio Arletta is making yearly planners, so we'll plaster a huge link right there. I use my 2024 Rio Arletta official calendar. Every day it shows today this moon is moving from Gemini to Cancer, and it gives all kinds of handy information. The 2025 edition is going to be more like a journal kind of binder. I don't know what she's planning, but it's awesome every year. And this year she's taking it to the next level. So support Rio. Yeah, I'm doing dialogues again. That feels good. I'll be in dialogue soon with a couple awesome people like Abby Quinn of Sumerian Astrology. And that's a YouTube channel and a website, Sumerian Astrology. We're going to be talking about Sumerian astrology and how it evolved into Babylonian astrology and how that became Greek astrology, which we are doing. Like everything we're looking at here, these are Greek techniques. We inherited this in the modern world from the Greeks, and we don't do it that differently. Most of us, what we're doing on this channel is distinctly different than anything done in ancient Greece. But how the arc of evolution went from Sumer through Acadia, the Chaldeans, and Babylon, and how it became Greek, and the things that changed along the way, we're going to deep dive that. We'll look at that. And then I'll be a guest of Chiron Phoenix on his channel, Pluto in Capricorn Astrology. And actually in both instances, we're going to deep dive the history of astrology. So keep your eyes open, keep your eyeballs peeled. Yeah, peel them for that. that's going to be cool. I'm very excited. Yeah, I did a teaching thing. I had a teaching spot at Dr. Danny's school of we'll get a link up there for Dr. Danny's school. I taught a class on Uranus with Dr. Danny, and it was great. It raised nearly $900 for Serena's GoFundMe. I want to thank you for that opportunity, Dr. Danny. And I want to highlight Serena's GoFundMe to see her story. Just follow the link or the link in the description. It'll be the same. Serena's in a state of ongoing need for support, and so are a lot of people in Asheville. Shit, Beloved Asheville. Put it up on the screen. Donate to Beloved Asheville. That is all. That's all for now. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking the time to get wise to the skies. All right. I wish everyone a very, very blessed month. I'll be back next month for this Scorpio new moon, and we'll see you then. Blessings.